You may have knew Neil Armstrong as only as the first man to walk on the moon, but he was known for more than just doing this, like being an engineer, a test pilot, an astronaut, and an administrator for NACA. Russia, or the Soviet Union now at the time, was battling against the NACA to see who could get to the moon the fastest. The Soviet Union was planning to race the NACA to the moon during the Cold War to see who could get to the moon first. The main event of the Apollo 11 mission is that the NACA, also known as NACA, wanted to be the first astronautical group to get to another planet, so they decided to build a spacecraft named the Apollo 11, which is why this mission is called this. The NACA decided to send Neil Armstrong and two other men up to the moon in the Apollo 11 spacecraft. During their first stop on their 8-day voyage, they stopped at the moon, and when they got to the moon, Neil Armstrong jumped out of the Apollo 11 spacecraft and said, "One small step for man, but one giant leap for mankind." This saying is one of the most known sayings of the United States of America. Then they made some tests on the moon, and then they continued on their 4-day voyage back to Earth. People of the United States of America thought that the Apollo 11 mission was a great part of the new history that they could learn about the Earth's moon. Neil Armstrong died at the age of 82 and has been remembered by his acts of bravery, honor, and courage. He was mostly only known as the first man to walk on the moon, but he should have been known for all the other great things he did while he was alive. The Apollo 11 mission and NASA has changed a lot since July of 1969. On the trip to the moon, the Apollo 11 mission crew had landed on the moon to experiment and find research about the moon so they could find intel, and they also did tests on the moon. Neil Armstrong is only known as the first man to walk on the moon, but did you know he was more than just this simple man? He did lots of different things that helped many people. One of these things were that he went to the moon. He inspired people to believe in their dreams and do what they want with their lives. Half of Apollo's primary goal, landing on the moon, was achieved at 4:17 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time on July 20th, when Armstrong piloted Eagle to a touchdown on the moon with less than 30 seconds worth of fuel left in the lunar module. 6 hours later, Armstrong took his famous one giant leap for mankind. Aldrin joined him, and the two spent 2.5 hours drawing core samples, photographing what they saw, and collecting lunar rock. After more than 21 hours on the lunar surface, they returned to Collins on board Columbia, bringing 20.87 kilograms of lunar samples with them. The two moonwalkers had left behind scientific instruments, an American flag, and other mementos, including a plaque bearing the United States President Richard M. Nixon in the Central Pacific Recovery Area to welcome the Apollo 11 astronauts aboard the USS Hornet, prime recovery ship for the historical Apollo 11 lunar landing mission. Already confirmed to the Mobile Quarantine Facility (MQF) are left to right: Neil A. Armstrong, Commander; Michael Collins, Commanding Module Pilot; and Buzz Aldrin, Lunar Module Pilot. The Apollo 11 lunar module ascent stage with astronauts Neil A. Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin aboard. Photographed from the Commander and Service Module's CSM during rendezvous in lunar orbit on July 21st, 1969. The lunar module was making its docking approach to the CSM. Astronaut Mitchell Collins remained with the CSM in the lunar orbit, while the other two crewmen explored the lunar surface. Launched by a Saturn V rocket from Kennedy Space Station in Merritt Island, Florida, on July 16, Apollo 11 was the fifth manned mission of NASA's Apollo program. Apollo spacecraft had three parts: a commander module, CM, with a cabin for the three astronauts, and the only part that landed back on Earth, a service module, SM, which supported the commanding module with propulsion, electrical power, oxygen, and water, and a lunar module, LM, for landing on the moon after being sent towards the moon by the Saturn V's upper stage. The astronauts separated the spacecraft from it and traveled for 3 days until they entered into lunar orbit. Armstrong and Aldrin then moved into the lunar module and landed in the Sea of Tranquility. They stayed a total of about 21.5 hours on the lunar surface. After lifting off in the upper part of the lunar module and rejoining Collins on the commanding module, they returned to Earth and landed in the Pacific Ocean on July 24th. Broadcasted on live TV to a worldwide audience, Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface and decided the event as one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Apollo 11 officially ended the space race and fulfilled national goal possessed in 1961 by the U.S. President John F. Kennedy. In a speech before the U.S. Congress before the decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. On July 19th at 17:21:50 UTC, Apollo 11 passed behind the moon and fired its service propulsional engine to enter lunar orbit. In the 30 orbits that followed, the crew saw passing views on their landing site in the southern Sea of Tranquility, about 12 miles southwest of the crater Sabine D. The landing site was selected in part because it had been characterized as relatively flat and smooth by the automatic Ranger 8 and Surveyor 5 landers, along with the Lunar Orbiter mapping spacecraft, and unlikely to present major landing or extravehicular activity (EVA) challenges. On July 20th, 1969, the lunar module Eagle separated from the command module Columbia. Collins alone aborted Columbia, inspected Eagle as it piloted before him to ensure the craft was not damaged. As the descent began, Armstrong and Aldrin found that they were passing landmarks on the surface 4 seconds early and reported that they would land miles west of their target point. 5 minutes into the descent burn in 6,000 feet, 1,800 m, above the surface of the moon. The LM navigation and guidance computer distracted the crew with the first of several unexpected 1,202 and 1,201 program alarms inside Mission Control Center in Houston, Texas. Computer engineer Jack Garman told guidance officer Steve Bales it was safe to continue the descent and that this was relayed to the crew. The program alarms indicated executive overflows, meaning the guidance computer could not complete all of its tasks in real time and had to postpone some of them.